So it's the middle of the night, and I find myself ruminating on something I often ruminate on when it's the middle of the night. Is Eric Bischoff a genius? So, if you don't know Eric Bischoff, I don't know why you would click on this video if you don't, but if you don't, he was in charge of WCW, which in the 90s was the main competitor to WWE at the time. And for about a year and a half, WWE was being beat in the ratings by his show, WCW Nitro. And a lot of that has to do with one of Eric Bischoff's creations, the NWO. The thing about that is WCW couldn't keep up the momentum and eventually fell into an absurd parody of itself and would eventually fold and be bought out by the WWE. Now, Bischoff would bounce around a little bit, working for the WWE for a while, and then being the head producer of TNA. And there's a few positive things about his time at TNA. Few, but generally it's considered a pretty huge disaster. If you're curious what I mean by that, I think the Aces and A's storyline had some really strong elements. Similar problems later, but strong starting elements, and causing Bubba Ray to be a bigger deal was a good result of that. And that storyline has Eric written all over it, because it's pretty much NWO but motorcycle, and he just did the same things he did in WCW. So it hints that he might be a one-trick pony, but nowadays all he really does is talk about that year and a half where he was on top of the world. And the thing about that is he almost comes off a little bit like a one-hit wonder who just constantly talks about his one success and nothing else. And that sounds mean and it feels mean, but the thing about it is that one-hit wonder, that year and a half success, arguably was the greatest achievement in professional wrestling history. At least from the promotion side of it. And that's the thing. Nobody has ever done what he did. Nobody could. He arguably was one of the greatest wrestling bookers in history because he did it. No other great wrestling booker in history accomplished what he did, which was beat Vince McMahon. Like, Dusty Rhodes couldn't do it, Bill Watts couldn't do it, and let's be honest, it's still a young company, and it has all the potential in the world, and I have great affection for many parts of it, but it's looking like Tony Khan is not going to be able to do it. Arguably a much better storyteller, Paul Heyman, who's maybe one of the greatest wrestling promoters in just like storytelling ability, he couldn't do it. No, it was Eric Bischoff who did it. And the truth of it is, nobody will ever do it now, because the person who ultimately screwed over Vince McMahon was Vince. Vince screwed Vince by being an awful person who hurt people. So that has to count for a whole lot, right? That counts for everything. None of the territories could beat Vince. Not the NWA could beat Vince. And the NWO was a great storyline. Arguably one of the best storylines anybody's ever come up with. If we put in music terms, what if the Beatles' first album was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band? And then it was like the really bad Paul McCartney single albums for the rest of the time. Paul's my favorite Beatle, by the way. If I feel bad whenever I criticize anybody, but he is my favorite Beatle. I like his songs more than the other guys. I guess when you really think about it, there's a certain level of arrogance in assuming Paul McCartney might see this video and me needing to say like, oh no, Sir Paul, I actually like your stuff, don't worry. I think storytelling wise, Eric has a problem is he doesn't totally know how to do endings correctly. So it's like, I go back and forth on this. I don't have an answer, but I guess I'm tired of the thoughts constantly swirling in my mind, and I just want them to get out there. He is on YouTube. I know that. And I do watch his podcast. Not all the time, mind you, but I do watch it for historical reference, and because it is interesting, because he does have interesting things to say. And if he sees this, I am a fan, decently big fan of the stuff that everybody likes, and less of a fan of the later period stuff. Again, there's a certain amount of arrogance assuming that somebody relatively high up like him will see this video